everybody. We're back on the Solution Stack. What's happening?
Oh, living the dream.
Living the dream. We're just talking about fishing. Everybody needs to get out and see nature and connect because it's good for your brain and everything else.
Yeah, definitely good for the soul.
You got to do it. I wish people would do that more.
Yeah.
Turn off.
Harder and harder in the digital age, but more and more necessary.
I know.
There's a proven health benefit to doing it. So, taking time to yourself, taking time in nature,
Yep.
scientifically proven to help you feel better and be healthier.
So it's
Do it.
off the charts. It's funny because I got Starlink for something else for an event that we do, so I needed to have dedicated, and I found myself taking it out when I did go out there. I was like, this is dumb. Why am I taking this out? I'm completely defeating the purpose. It's awesome to go and watch football in the middle of nowhere where you think there's no internet, but then you can get it.
Sure.
And then the emails buzz. You're like, nah, this is kind of defeating the purpose of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's a section of my psyche that accepts the challenge of trying to lose cell signal.
Yeah.
Playing cat and mouse with it.
Yep. Say, I can't be here.
I can see on a digital level.
Just wrap myself in a Faraday bag. You can't get to me. Oh, man. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity as a business risk, not an IT problem.
Yeah.
Which I like that. So putting this together, when you're thinking through this, what does that mean? What are you meaning when it's not an IT problem? Because everybody thinks that it is if something happens.
Right. So IT has always been this kind of shadowy aspect of business. And if you think about it, though, every business is directly dependent upon technology these days.
Yeah.
It's not just a tool, it's a core business function. And the securing of those computer assets is really one of the top priorities for any organization at this point, because it's directly impacting your ability to do what you do, i.e. make money.
Yeah. Is there a business that doesn't use it? It just made me think of that. Is there any type of industry that does not use?
Not that I can think of, at least in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's ubiquitous to life, right? That'd be, trying to identify a human that doesn't use technology in some way, shape, or form. And
middle of the Amazon and South America, I guess, farming, agriculture, they ain't using it.
Sure, all 8 people that do that.
I guess there is some professions or livelihoods.
Sure, not to say that it can't be done without technology.
Yeah.
But technology has become a force multiplier and really is, baseline to life. And then if you extrapolate that out, core piece of any business, really, that certainly not from a business standpoint, again, unless you're some rural farmer, that's, trading with neighbors or whatever, but that's such a small percentage of the people in the world.
Amish, just thought about that.
Amish, yeah.
That's a whole people group.
Yeah. They still, I think, use probably more technology than they let on.
Probably.
Yeah.
They have that, forget what it's called, but it's that gap period where you I think teen or early 20s where you can go outside of the Amish.
Was that Rumspringa?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think, where you can go and some will be like, I'm out into the real world. Some will be like, no, I'm going back into the fold.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So one of the questions was the executives, they think that it's just an IT thing. So how is this a bad mindset?
Where to start? I mean, that's again, it being a foundational component of any business, computers, some see it as a necessary evil, some see it as a differentiator. But ultimately, the computers themselves and how you use them really is, the baseline for how businesses operate, right? So when you say, oh, it's just IT, is it just IT when the computers are down? No, right? Your business is stopped. You're losing money. When everything's going well,
productivity, everything.
Yeah. And when everything's going well, then they're just computers. When they're not, it's a crisis in a lot of cases.
Yeah. It halts production.
It does. As a support provider, I've heard many different numbers when systems are down. Do you know how much this is costing me? And, generally speaking, they have a point, but they're making that point at the wrong time.
I was just going to say, usually when you get that question, it's frantic, all hell's breaking loose. They're like, fix it.
Yeah. It's definitely urgent and with good cause.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, part of business strategy is how do you maintain production, right? If
Mhm.
computers are just seen as this kind of nebulous overhead cost, then you don't end up putting the attention that you need to put into it to
Right.
keep that production running. And, you know, even after an incident, and when I say incident, it could mean a failure or a breach or a misconfiguration or, something along those lines, that's when people start to feel the pain, but it doesn't seem to change the proactive side.
I was just gonna say, yeah, what just curious, what's the biggest number you've ever heard? Like, "This is costing me
Uh,
100,000,000 a day,
150,000 an hour.
just in everything's down.
Yep.
Couldn't process payments, couldn't get inventory," something like that?
Yeah.
Goodness, yeah. Yeah, and I imagine yes, do you say that? Like, "Gosh, I wish you would've, like, called me before."
Good luck with that. Um,
Don't ever say that in a
so, as a service provider, we do essentially two things, right? We advise, we execute, but there's a decision point in the middle there that really is incumbent upon the client to make.
Mhm,
And a lot of times they'll focus strictly on the cost of it, not necessarily the potential of downside. Nobody thinks they're going to get a ticket for going 55 miles an hour in a 45, right?
mhm.
And so when that happens, everyone's pissed off about it, but you're the one on the gas pedal, right?
Yeah,
You're making that choice.
yeah.
And so, it can be a bit of a conundrum in that, trying to explain to somebody the potential cost of doing X, Y, or Z versus the potential, you know, problems that it causes if you don't
Mhm,
generally isn't super well received. And I think that is kind of backwards, right?
mhm,
So ultimately, taking the time to do things like a business impact analysis, a financial impact analysis ahead of time gives you better information to make a good decision,
mhm,
a decision you're going to have to live with, right?
mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah, you need data points to make it.
you do, and it takes effort.
Mhm,
It's certainly not a pull out of thin air and that's what is.
mhm.
You have to kind of understand your business, the core functions of it, make sure that you understand how cyber assets kind of fall in line with that,
And how much it costs when the hamster falls on the
and
wheel.
how much it costs when
Everything
when it
just
goes
stops.
sideways.
Yeah,
Because there's always a cost,
yeah.
right? I mean, some people like unknowingly just accept that risk, right? If you it's that old Rush song, right? I think it's Rush. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Oh, I know that line. I can't think if it's Rush or not.
Yeah,
Somebody listening,
yeah,
hook
that's a
us
little
up.
out of my musical purview.
But still, the lyric gotcha.
And it stuck with me, especially as I started to dive more into risk and risk management, right?
Mhm.
But if I could impart one thing to everybody, inaction is a choice,
Oh, dude,
and
yes, yeah.
that is a choice that you have to live with. And
Mhm,
just like farming out your IT or cybersecurity is a choice, and
mhm.
you have to kind of live with the consequences of that as well. So be careful who you choose to kind of serve that role within
Right.
that organization, because you know just take for example this CrowdStrike incident
Mhm,
from a few months back, right?
mhm.
So
The big one? Like a couple.
yeah, the big one, right?
Okay.
Like there are so many businesses that ground to a halt because of that, right? And it was a security tool, right?
Yeah.
And very few people actually consider that their security tools were the things that would take them down. It's more common than you think,
The things that are meant to prop them up.
right? And so, you know, it's a careful, deliberate process, and there's still going to be problems.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you treat it as an afterthought, those problems are going to compound.
So that being said, I mean, the whole point of getting this podcast and everything going is a solution stack. So it's
Yep.
solution. So that being said, with what you're talking about, what is one of the things that a CEO should be thinking today? Like today, not as in like today, but like, I don't know, what are we, what of 2025? What are we in? Q3?
Yep.
Q3 of 2025. So right now, getting ready to go into four and business planning. What do they need to be thinking about?
So there's nothing new here that I would advocate to think about as far as conceptually. I mean, there is, but when we're talking about like cybersecurity and just IT in general as a business function,
Mm-hmm.
the foundation, the fundamentals that go into it are really what I think CEOs should focus on. And CEOs don't need to get in the weeds from the technical aspect, right?
Mhm.
There's the scorecard kind of concept, right? If you could give me 5 key numbers about a business that would tell you the health of the operations when you're on a desert island,
Mhm.
those are the things you should be trying to surface, right?
One of my takeaways from talking is that if that question was asked to me, right, I would say I would need to focus on proactivity than reactivity.
Yeah.
That's like
So,
a big duh.
right. So knowing what you have,
Mhm.
right? Knowing what risk is out there, knowing what's going to happen if that risk becomes a reality and how you recover from it.
Mhm.
Broadly, those are the strokes here, right? So, first things first is, just understanding what you have, right?
Mhm.
So if we look at that in terms of, computers, right? It's an inventory of not just the physical devices, but all of your applications and your data elements or assets, files, databases, et cetera. And then really kind of going through and understanding what risks those pose to you, right?
Mhm.
Because everything has a risk associated with it. And then it's okay, we know that we can't completely eliminate risk, right? What are we going to do to drive that risk down a little bit
Mhm.
or a lot of it to an acceptable level? And then what are we going to do if that risk becomes realized? How are we going to get back to our normal operations? And again, that's textbook. That's just tried and true
Mhm.
cybersecurity, IT stuff, right?
I look at it like preventative maintenance from a pro athlete. Like you can get out there and play, but if you're not sleeping, nutrition, stretching, doing all these proactive stuff, you're gonna get the reactive injury. So
Yeah, and sometimes you're going to get it anyway, right?
yeah, totally. So
Right.
what's your plan on that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, there is a very parallel kind of track that goes along with being successful at anything, in my opinion. That's preparation,
Mhm.
right? Execution, and then recovery.
One of the things I think it was on the last one about human firewall. For me, I see a lot of our team getting texts, and me personally, a lot on like UPS. So somehow they're crawling any orders and going, "Oh, your package is delayed. Click here to reconcile." Whatever it is. I probably would have clicked on that stuff prior to having these conversations. Now I got everybody like, "Don't click. Don't go to that email and say, go check your tracking."
Good.
You
That's what
see
it
that a
is.
lot?
Oh yeah. I
Almost like
mean,
phishing
yeah, and again, they're not crawling anything, right? They understand that most people are waiting on a package
at some point in their life.
at a decent chunk of their life.
That's crazy because I thought that they were scraping UPS, FedEx, or Amazon
Nah.
and getting some kind of like, because isn't that public? Like you're tracking?
I mean, tracking numbers are sure, but they're relatively unique. I mean, it's a lot of effort for not a lot of reward. They're not
Mm,
necessarily telling you this package that you're exactly expecting is coming and click on this link to check it. It's, hey, you have a package coming because
it's AI. AI knows.
this is long before AI. But if you think about it, do you memorize all the tracking numbers for a
No, I have
package? Yeah,
no clue.
of course not. They're relatively long strings, and
Yeah.
you're not really going to put in the effort to memorize that. So they could throw out there any random number.
Hmm.
You're going to think it's something that's. I mean, it's all about how it's crafted as a whole, and
Yeah.
generally speaking, there's really nothing, we'll say, directly related behind it. It's literally shot in the dark.
Got it. That's well then that's that proactivity stuff. So would you if you had to come in front of a board, right? Would you say the same thing?
Yeah.
CEO conversation totally different, but a board, or is it the same?
CEO is generally the conduit to the board.
Hmm.
So the CEO answers to the board. And so, what I would tell any CEO if they're looking to kind of communicate a cybersecurity status is, again, that scorecard, right?
Hmm.
That executive summary that says, here are our 5 key statistics. Here are our 3 top vulnerabilities. Here's where we're at with them. Here's what we're doing to fix them.
Hmm.
Here's what we're doing to drive down this risk in a digestible way
Hmm.
that kind of just gives people some indication that you're doing the thing. But each organization is slightly different in what their objectives are, which then will drive what scorecard metrics
Hmm.
and then how they prioritize those vulnerabilities.
You have those scorecards handy?
I don't have them on me,
No,
but,
pull back at the office.
yeah, we can certainly put that together, but we generally do them bespoke, meaning we work with organizations to build a scorecard that's more directly relevant to them.
Yeah.
I can spit out probably, 100 different metrics that,
Mhm.
could have value to you, but
20-point inspection on your car.
yeah, something like
20-point
that.
inspection on your cybersecurity risk assessment.
Right, and that's that all comes from an assessment, right?
Yeah.
So you start with assessments, then you get the data, and then you look at it and you say, "Okay, here are the things that we need to work on." And then oftentimes those scorecards will change over time, right? They're not static because you're either solving problems or introducing new ones,
Mhm.
and your priorities can and will shift, right? If you're doing it right anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
at least in my opinion. So there are some kind of static ones. You're looking at number of phishing attempts, right? How many tickets are we getting for these types of things? How many breaches do we have, right? Most common breach we see at this point is somebody clicked on a link, entered their credentials, and gave access to their mailbox. Okay,
Yikes.
we can surface that number through our ticketing system for each organization and say, hey, man, you had 5 last month and 11 this month, or hey, you're doing something right. You've been trending down over the last quarter, et cetera. And, that could be one metric if you are dealing with that from an organizational level. But, again, it's going to be give me no more than 5 things that help tell me the health of this function within our
Mm,
organization. And here are the top 3 things that we need to focus on. And if you can distill that down to, you know, a very digestible kind of blurb, if you will, it can help drive good high level decisions without having to understand that, oh, this CVSS score is 9.8.
mhm,
Well, that's not really relevant to us because we don't use it in this way, or, just there's so much nuance and kind of technical vagary, I
mhm.
guess is the best word.
And get it all done by Friday
There is no
for
one
anything.
size fits all solution here. So really it is, again, putting an emphasis on, hey, we need a program, we need a way to measure it,
Mhm.
we need a way to act on it, we need a way to report.
What is the impact of something like this going on that apart from the tech side?
So again, it's keeping your operations running, right? So there's a number of different impacts that could be kind of played out here, and
Mm,
and obviously the most prominent one is production, but there's others. Getting a reputation in the industry for not securing your stuff may drive some
mhm.
business away, or could possibly even create some regulatory attention that you don't want.
Is there legal issues?
There can be legal issues. Yeah, I mean, negligence is a real thing,
Yeah.
and
But don't
that's
you have, like, E&O insurance or something like that, like cybersecurity
yeah,
insurance
yeah, and
for that?
that's yep, and that's still a double edged sword in that most cyber insurance is going to underwrite you based on what you tell them you are doing.
Mm,
And if you're not actually doing those things, you could void your policy, right? You could refuse. And then there's some rare cases. I don't want to make too much of a mountain out of this, but
mhm.
uh, some insurance companies have gone after companies for essentially fraud,
Hmm.
for lying on the cyber liability apps. And, there's also like so many different flavors of cyber liability
I
insurance.
bet. It's
Like
just there's
there's
new.
E&O,
Yeah.
there's loss production, there's, reputation harm. All of these
Are
things
those
are,
riders onto
yep.
each one?
Yep.
Huh.
So a lot of general business insurance policies will have, say, a cyber component, $50,000 limit,
Mm.
right? Maybe that's good for you, maybe it's not, right? But if you don't
We should have
go,
an insurance person on here
you
and
should.
talk to them
Yeah,
because that's
that's
interesting.
a hot topic.
It is because there's so many different things.
Mhm.
Like with CrowdStrike, right? I gotta think that a public company like that has their I's dotted, T's crossed, like, they know what's up. So if something like that happens, they go, "Hey, we told you this good, it's not on us."
Mm, you'd think that, but the funny
Yeah.
thing about lawsuits is there's really not a solid criteria for being able to file one. Was it Delta Airlines
When?
that wanted to go sue them?
Mm,
Maybe did. I kinda lost track of that, honestly, but, the reality is that, that took down a significant number of organizations, and, I'm sure some of them either contemplated or did end up filing, like, productivity loss claims with insurance
mhm.
carriers.
Just to get a little bit of the money back.
Yeah, yeah, and, this is another kinda tie-in here is that, if you can quantify your losses due to a cyber event, then that can help you craft what level of insurance you need to carry,
Yeah.
right?
Have
So,
have you been following this whole Life 360? You know what Life 360 is?
no, I'm not familiar.
So it's the app that you can get on with a family or whatever, and you can see their location, and it's like I can see where all my kids are on their phone. We're all synced up. And obviously, there's a driving component with teens and just whatever. So we can see how you're speeding, you're braking, you're whatever, and it knows where the speed limits are. So they're getting busted right now, getting looked into because I think they're selling that information to insurance carriers.
Hmm,
And insurance, if they can see that this teen is driving X, Y, and Z fast, whatever, they go, don't want to insure you.
yeah.
And so that's a big, big bad thing. So does that fall under this cyber component?
Not direct. I mean, that's more of a privacy issue,
Okay.
than necessarily like a cybersecurity issue. I mean,
Well, you would deal with that. You do it
yeah,
on the privacy side?
we help people understand what it means and like what the regulations are
How it
and
impacts
exactly
them and
right,
everything.
right. But there's um that's a whole nother world of kind of consideration when you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
Almost always driven by regulatory in that case.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, but I think there's a bunch of spin-offs. But they're actually going, hey, the users know, and the users are giving that it's a user's fault. But we're sidetracking from the whole it's interesting though.
And maybe that's another conversation for another time. But because there is some at least potential there for impact to your organization, but not directly related in this case.
Yeah. I was looking for a question I'd ask. Totally forgot. Why do some companies bounce back quickly from cyber? Oh, I mean, that's a good question. Why I'm more getting your take, but why do some companies bounce back quicker than others?
Preparation. I mean,
They got a plan.
they have a plan, they have the tools, they have the staffing, right?
Mhm.
So ultimately, there's three kind of general components, right? There's the administrative, technical, and physical controls, and in the cyberspace, probably the most prominent is technical. But
Mhm.
from an organization standpoint, it all starts with administration, right?
Mhm.
So ultimately, having the buy-in from the top down to say, "Hey, we need to understand what our risk is, prepare to deal with it if it becomes an issue. Here's how we're going to do that,
Mhm.
and we're going to get the people who are properly trained and equipped to do those things when the time comes. If the time comes, the time will come." But
Oh, it will.
generally speaking, those who have a plan and the resources to execute that plan have a better resiliency, right? So they're building in high availability, they're building in solid backup systems, they have well thought out and kind of layered defense strategies. They have people who know kind of how to pull them back into operations when something happens. So,
If you've got 10 owners or C-suite, whatever, they're the ones who respond, and they come to you with this, "Oh, crap, fix it, we're losing money." How many of them go, "Okay, let's go back and fix this from the start, be proactive," versus how many go, "Thanks for fixing it," and they go right back into their ways?
no comment.
10 C-suite, 10 decision makers.
Um,
What's your percentage?
maybe two.
2
Maybe
go back to the old ways and go, "Thanks for fixing it"?
no, 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 no. But maybe two say, "Hey, good
No
question." Right.
way. Nuh-uh. That's equivalent to well, I shouldn't say that's a bad analogy. I was gonna say, like, that's equivalent to someone having a bad heart issue and they go back to drinking.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's about 2. You're
you're
right.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
They go back into their, "Oh, wait, old way." It's just nature. It is.
Yeah, I mean, again, most businesses are focused, heavily on producing, which
Mm,
I get it. And, sometimes these events are not enough to make significant changes because again, it's still potential, right? Like a business email compromise, I've seen them people lose excess of $100,000
jeez.
on a single event, and they still have some resistance to putting in place a 10-minute training video once a month for their staff. I mean, but
Don't click on the Chick-fil-A link
but
from
it
Gmail.
sure, a little more sophisticated than that, but, at the end of the day, it's still something that could have been spotted
Right.
and it's okay if you do the calculation, so this cost me $100,000, will insurance pay for it, right? That's a big part of it, right? That's
Mm,
why people have insurance, so a lot of people lean on that pretty heavily. What are my costs as far as if I have 30 employees and take 10 minutes a month, okay, so that's 300 minutes. That's, 5 man hours of labor that I'm losing
Add it
times
all up.
12, right? So 60 hours a year. And then,
Mm,
over time, it's like, okay, how much is that costing me from a salary load and
yeah,
productivity load? And they might do the calculation and say, okay, like
we're fine with
100
that.
grand, you know,
Like you said, it's risk.
right. And if we expect that's going to happen once every 5 years, then, it may not necessarily make sense to throw a bunch of time and money at it. And, but if I'm honest, like that's a level of kind of decision making and um, kind of forethought that I don't actually see. If somebody showed me those calculations on paper, I'd go, okay, yeah, sure.
But they don't have them.
Good on you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're just saying, oh, I'm going to kind of stick my finger in there, see which way the wind's blowing and how I feel that day. And
hmm
that's how I make that decision. Well, okay, then again, if
Major,
that's a risk you choose to accept, even if
major
you're not
bad.
necessarily like understanding it.
So you've been doing this for a long time. Can you identify an organization like just walking up off the street and be like, okay, this
Mm,
one's postured incorrectly, like they're super weak.
almost immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you? Sounds like it's secret sauce.
I mean,
Give me three, like real quick, like you scan and go dot 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 dot. Here, I already know.
so I mean, a lot of times it's before we even walk in the door. Like, you know,
Ooh,
so we have a lot of people come to us and say, "Hey, can you take a look at our systems?" And if they say, "Here's the password, go for it," instantly,
number one.
number one,
Okay.
number one, giving a third party access, like, a lot of times there's no NDA, there's nothing in place. It's
Oh, I see that. Now that you
walk
say
in
that, I'm like, oh,
and they go, "Oh, hey, we have this problem. Can you take a look at it?" Or, we want to, possibly engage you for services. Can you just give us an idea of what we're looking at here? And, they're whoever kind of manages their IT for the organization says, "Here's our domain admin password. Go for it."
yeah.
I mean, that's number one. Like that's
Okay, don't do that.
don't do that. The second is like pretty clear in when you engage with somebody. Again, this is all kind of pre-engagement, right? If
Mm-hmm.
if they really don't know what they're looking for in a vendor, they just know they need an IT person and they're reaching out to
Mm-hmm.
kind of hire someone to just handle it for them. I call this abdicating the IT function instead of delegating, right? You don't know what you need, you just know it needs to be done and
Mm-hmm.
here, go handle it for me.
You're just
That's
making phone calls off of Google and saying, all right, getting to the lowest
well,
price point.
price point, yeah, yes and no. I mean, again, it's generally going to be more about like knowing what you have, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, right? If you don't have those things,
Mm-hmm.
which again is quite a few organizations, then I know there's some work to do there on kind of building out a program.
And you're saying they don't know personnel what, like skill set what, or they don't know what would they need.
Um, Kind of generally what they're trying to accomplish, right?
Okay. Okay.
So,
That's number
make
two.
my computer work is certainly a high level goal. I
Yeah.
get that, but what is it specifically you're trying to accomplish by engaging an IT provider? Because most people can hire someone, I don't want to say off the street, but relative,
Kinda.
kind of, yeah, that can come in and make your computers work,
Yeah.
right? Like that's not rocket science at this point, right? So a lot of it's just set it up and go. But at the end of the day, like you still need to understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So that's number two.
Yeah, and then number 3 is, just engagement from the leadership. So oftentimes, especially with smaller businesses, the IT function will be delegated out to like HR or CFO and, those kind of things. The ownership or kind of leadership doesn't want to be bothered with it effectively.
So you walk into a meeting, you get a call, whatever, and you like, okay, who am I talking to? And it's like, I've been tasked to get information from you. You
Yeah.
automatically know
Right.
they're already round able.
Yeah, that generally tells me that it's not important or a priority
Mm-hmm.
in their organization. And look, it's not necessarily meant as a like critique necessarily. It's
It's an observation. It's not.
it's an observation,
It's something you've
exactly.
learned. It's the tea leaves that you're, reading.
But
You're like, oh,
generally speaking, when we run across those types of engagements, we find that they're less kind of proactive.
hmm
They place less importance on the IT function, and we know that that's this is where our expertise comes in for sure. But at some point, again, we advise you still need to make a decision as an organization. to have us go and execute.
Mhm.
If you're just saying, "Hey, go do IT for me," you're kind of abdicating that function, and that's a great sign of kind of where you're at from an organizational maturity level, much less an IT maturity level.
Right. Well, I mean, based on the previous question, it's 80%. 80% don't have that. So 80% of the time, you're gonna be walking in, they're getting a phone call, and you're like, "I already know."
Yeah. And it's a challenge for us as providers, but
Mhm.
it's one that we're well aware of, and we do what we can to help simplify the decision making process and kind of help guide those things without having to have a ton of interaction. But
What's the challenge from your side? Because it sounds like the challenge is telling them they're screwed in a very nice way, in a very digestible way.
I mean, it's there's a number of challenges that are
Yeah.
posed, but primarily it's going to be, a lot of times we walk into what we call technical debt, right?
Mhm.
There's no process or procedure. There's really nothing that's existing. It's and again, it's a spectrum, right? So there's extreme ends, people who really have it together, people who really don't, and kind of everyone else is somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
But ultimately, we have to come in and set a standard, and sometimes that standard is going to conflict with some existing business processes, right? So
Mhm.
we have to kind of come in and resolve here's our best practice, here's why, here's what we want to do to correct it or to get it in line with our standard. This is basically why you hired us, right? Is to bring in some level of professionalism and standards to these things. And that's kind of a subtext to just make it work,
Yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, you still have to buy in, right? If you're not willing to change your ways to get in line with best practices, well, then when it breaks and you're angry at us, and we say, "Hey, look,"
Mhm.
right? So there's this kind of always bit of back and forth there.
It's kinda like the person who wants to get in shape is mad at their trainer, but they're showing up every day with Krispy Kreme boxes of them.
Uh,
You're like, "No."
triggered. I'm triggered.
It's triggered. "Where's my box?" Have you ever walked into a scenario, was it the organization, whatever, and they just have it dialed? Like, you literally walk out and go, "That was perfect."
Sometimes,
Yeah?
I mean, perfect's
Close to
not.
perfect, yeah.
Sure, sure.
Exceptional, you're like, they got it."
Yeah, and sure.
Okay.
And generally, when we walk out, we don't come back because those people,
It's good, they
have
got it, yeah.
right?
Well, they
So,
might want an assessment, third party, "Hey, tell us how we're doing." A lot of people wanna be validated. I mean, it makes sense to go and be like, "Listen, I've had my blinders on for 10 years. I think we're doing a good job. Can you please look at it?"
yeah.
And you guys will provide that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, generally speaking, again, that's a relatively small percentage
Mhm.
of engagements that we partake in that are that way.
Less than 10?
There's always, yeah, 10%?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, probably closer to 3.
3?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty rare. But, that, again, we have some pretty high standards, what we expect to
Mhm.
see from an IT infrastructure and an IT program. And, just full honesty here, those people are usually not in our target market.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we're happy to come in and validate against our best practices and kind of general best practices. But at the end of the day, if you've got it pretty dialed in, then we have a pretty limited engagement.
When it comes to those that you've seen, like, I just wanna move over into, like, that perfect scenario or exceptional scenario.
Mm.
What are, like, a couple things that stand out? Like, how often do they review their plan, their cybersecurity plan?
Annually at minimum,
Okay.
right? So cybersecurity planning is a number of little parts and pieces that come in to kind of form a bigger bucket, if
Mhm.
you will, and going through and actually understanding what you have on a at least yearly basis and kind of
Mhm.
what you're doing with it, why you're doing it, those kind of things, where you might need to improve or change because technology moves quick.
Mm. So fast.
So a lot of the times, what I'm looking at stuff is okay. What does their documentation look like? Like, do they know what they have? Do they know why they have it? Who uses it? Why? These kind of things, right? And then I'm looking at, do they have?
Shoot, we don't even have that.
Well, again, most people don't.
Yeah.
Uh,
And the whole time you're talking, I'm like, "Check, you need to do that. Check, you need to do that. Don't do that. Don't even know what that is."
yeah, and it's going back and evaluating tools. Like, is this
Uh-huh.
still the right tool for us? Is there something better, something different that we need to be addressing? But really, it all starts with understanding what you have, understanding
Mhm.
what it does. How does this help the business? How does it hinder the business? what risk does it? I mean, there's a lot of parts and pieces, but you can actually provide me with some level of detail around those kind of factors.
Mhm.
You've got your stuff together.
What is there a report or, like, something that a CEO stakeholder should be getting every month, and what would that be? Like, going back to, like, you gotta look at the gauges on the dashboard to know where you're going.
Sure.
So what would that be for this specific field?
So, the top five for me, let me think about this because we have a number of kind of different ways of looking at it.
Mhm.
But the very first one I would look at is like compliance with security awareness training.
So every month,
Every month I'm getting,
that's on a report. Compliance is one.
yeah.
Like a
So
scorecard?
like a scorecard. So
Okay.
X% of our staff have taken the security awareness training for the month, the quarter, the year, whatever that is.
Okay, okay.
Right.
Documentation of the training, got it.
Right. So we sent out, like, we do um like a monthly 5 to 7 minute training for all of our staff, right? And I get a report every month, says here's all the people who took it, here's all the people who did,
Mm,
right?
okay.
And that's
Accountability.
right. Because again, for me, that human firewall is the first kind of step there, right? So
Okay.
that would be my first one, security awareness adherence.
Number 1?
Number two would be the like vulnerability management,
Uh-huh.
right? So generally speaking, you'll get a score, like an overarching score.
Mhm.
Most tools will provide a, hey, you're at a C level or a D level, right? I'd want to see that as a CEO,
Okay.
right?
Like,
I'd
we're
want
getting
to,
a D. Why are we getting a D? Bring it up to a C, a
right,
B.
right.
Okay.
And then I'd want to see like the progression of that score. So I know it's kind of the same metric, but I'd want to see probably the last 90 days on that score
Okay.
every month, that trailing 90 days.
Uh-huh.
And then I would also want to see like ticket statistics,
Like a surge in volume or down?
just you're obviously looking for down,
Mhm,
but down's not always a good thing because
mhm.
sometimes things don't get reported, right?
Okay.
So
But it's a trending indicator. So if I'm CEO, I go, "Oh, we don't we're not opening as much tickets. Great. Things are working."
sure,
Somebody
right?
would tell me.
So there's availability is a pretty significant component, right? So
Mhm,
downtime, how much downtime have we had? And then I think that would be what the fourth one,
mhm.
right? How much downtime have we had? And then the fourth one would, or the fifth one would be kind of life cycle related. Where are we at in our asset life cycle? I know clouds kind of push that a little bit, meaning you're not spending a lot on hardware as much. But
Oh, so if you got, like, old computers and a
yep,
bunch of BS old like
because I
okay.
want to know what it's going to cost me next quarter or next year.
Okay,
If we
okay.
have a fleet of 50 aging desktops that
Yeah.
we bought them all at once or over a 2 or 3 year period, like our servers getting old if you have a server or
Yeah.
maybe your phone system, right? So essentially projected IT expenditure would be one of those scorecard items for me.
I'm literally thinking about all this stuff, looking at those computers up front.
Hmm.
It's the same thing. That's super helpful. But in fact, I would say, like, of all the things, that's probably the number one. I would say into your L10s, your meetings, your monthly whatever, here's your dashboard.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. So it would, again, be kind of focused on making sure my team is equipped, making sure that we understand what's going on in the system, making sure we know what the financial impact is. That'd be kind of roughly the three buckets, right? The
Mhm.
people, the outcomes, the cost.
Yeah. And that scorecard, do you guys have that? Do you have something like that available? Like, that you would give and be like, "Oh," like a new CEO comes on, a new stakeholder.
Not really. So again, we would sit down and help you build it.
I think we should get one started, we could build it for 'em.
I mean, we can, but
It's already pretty badass.
just word of caution on that is, it's not the same for like a lot of organizations, right?
Mhm,
There isn't really necessarily a template that's going to fit you
mhm,
as well as something that we build, and it's not difficult, right?
mhm.
The process for understanding or kind of building out a scorecard is actually more simple than what people want it, want to give it like credence.
Yeah.
What are your business outcomes you're looking to achieve, right?
Mhm,
What are the steps that it takes to get there? Are those steps being done correctly in a timely manner? And you kind of pull back from there and then
mhm.
you take your top five. So, a lot of people think you have to have this crazy data analytics like background or these deep dives. And sure, like eventually once you have enough data points and things like that, you can do some pretty
Mhm.
significant deep dives. But I'll tell you, having 5 simple high-level numbers that you can look at
To give an
is
overall gauge.
way better than
Yeah,
having nothing.
yeah. "Hey, team, last week we had 50 tickets, let's get it down to 30. Oh, we got 32. Okay, we're
Right.
on pace. I know we're going the right direction."
We track the
There you go.
ratio of open tickets to close,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
we're at 90% close rate on tickets, we know that there's, buildup in the system that we need to address,
yeah,
right? If it's at 107, then we know we have some room to maybe do some other projects and
yeah.
things, right? So, we have a little bit more involved and kind of refined dashboard. We've been doing this for, I don't know, I think we started doing a
Long time.
actual scorecard like 6, 7 years ago.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
we've put some time and effort into refining it, but we started with a very simple number,
Mhm.
very simple number.
Mhm. And they all evolved, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, there you go. That is, super helpful. You've got your 5 items that you're gonna get looked at before you even step foot in Fuse. 3 or even get on the call, and then you also have your scorecard. So I think we're gonna let's work something up on
Sure.
that one giveaway. So, um, thank you. We'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.